So with the CTP Unequip event coming to a close, I thought now would be the perfect time to update the top 10 characters for each CTP tier list so that you guys have the best idea of where things should go. And if you got CTPs gambling or you got them from events and stuff like that, you have the best options for each one to have them equipped. Now, before we get started, just a few quick PSAs. One, just standard on all these types of videos. This is just my personal opinion. You're free to equip any CTP on any character that you want, build them any way that you want. Have fun, and that's the most important thing. Secondly, this list will not talk at all about the CTP of Transcendence in any form, the CTP of Patience in any form, and the CTP of Veteran in any form, because the first two are really bad, and the third one is super rare. Also, last PSA, I will mention on each CTP, I won't go into as big of a deep dive as before, but I will mention on the CTPs that need to be reforged versus the one that don't. Starting us off with the CTP of Insight. This does not need to be reforged, but keep in mind that it's very powerful when it's reforged. Even a Mighty Insight is very, very strong because it gets a brand new effect that's either very PvP focused or very PvE focused. It may have lost a little bit of that PvP value because of the fact that they're tweaking and lowering the impact of Pierce in PvP, and that is what the Mighty and Brilliant Insight CTPs do. If you don't do the boss damage types, which is that first yellow line, that second yellow line is decreasing additional pierce damage received. But if they're reducing additional pierce damage received by 50% or 70%, then that 20% is not going to matter nearly as much as it did when you were receiving the full amount of pierce. And that's just because, you know, percentages work better on larger numbers. That being said, the list for the CTP of Insight is essentially the same. I thought about maybe adding someone like Angel or Ebony Maw because of their ability to be a flexible support in things like Otherworld Battle, but there's just not enough of a need there for those types of characters. I also thought strongly about including Satana on this list because she's such an amazing support lead now, especially for fire damage dealing characters like Jean. But again, it's just one day. It sort of competes with Coulson, who's a very dedicated support for lots of other characters, so it's a little bit of a wider net. But you could certainly argue that Satana deserves to be 11th, let's say, on this list. For the Greed CTP, it always has to be reforged. A regular Greed does nothing, and you always want the Ambush proc. So that's just always the case, whether it's a Mighty or a Brilliant Greed, always want the Ambush proc. And the list for this one has changed a little bit. We're obviously going to start including Sentry in a lot of these PvP lists, although we don't have conclusive data just yet. From what it seems, even with PvE CTP testing, he has a ton of defense. So defense is not really the issue for Sentry. It's more about gearing him to deal, being able to deal large amounts of burst damage and also being able to deal with Reflect. And so the Ambush proc gives you Reflect immunity. It's one of only 2 CTPs that gives you Reflect immunity when they activate. And that's very, very powerful. You have the staple powerhouses with lots of one-shot potential with Adam. You have all the immortality gods, Wolverine, Madeline, Ghost Rider, Carnage, Hela, even Magic I threw in there just as a flyer in case all those metas get banned. You might see some of those characters lower on the totem pole, but who have access to 7 seconds of immortality become more popular. Also Black Widow because of the Giga Dodge. And then Jean Grey. I'm including Jean Grey here. She's the focus of this video because I think her value is shifting from PvP to PvE, but I do want to still keep her on the Greed list because it is a very good, flexible sort of hybrid role, and it's actually her best CTP if you want to dominate in PvP and also do well in PvE. It's really the only one that fits a pseudo-hybrid role. Definitely more PvP-oriented than PvE-oriented, but it still sort of satisfies both of those things where she's not useless in one game mode in favor of another. The Egg CTP, aka the CTP of Refinement, it has to be reforged and it has to have the Vitality proc on it. The Vitality proc gives you access to Super Guard Break immunity, which is really nice, and then it also gives you extra HP and things like that. This list has changed quite a bit. We've included the new Thanos, and I want to differentiate that from Farmer Thanos on the previous list because now we have a clear PvP Thanos and a clear PvE Thanos. So you would never use Farmer Thanos for PvP because you have access to the new sort of old King Thanos uniform, which is much better for PvP. You have staples here like Madeline and Carnage and Silver Surfer. Keep in mind for the likes of Madeline and Carnage, they need to have a lot of damage output, potentially from Otherworld Battle buffs or things like that, or very, very high attack on your cards in order to sort of balance it out with the Egg. The Egg provides a lot of defense, but it sort of sacrifices any offense that you would get from a Greed for those immortality characters. New Hulk uniform at the top of this one as well. I think a lot of people have an Egg on Hulk, and it's still good. However, The data coming out supports the idea that Hulk is now better for PvE and not much better for PvP. So although this is still a very good CTP for him, he is not the best character to take advantage of it from a PvP perspective. It's just that the egg is really good for Hulk because it scales his HP, which also helps him in PvE. So hopefully that makes sense to you guys. Again, I'm not saying that Hulk with an egg is better than Sentry or Silver Surfer or Madeline with an egg in PvP specifically. It's just that he can use all of that also in PvE, whereas the other characters can't do that. So hopefully that makes sense there. And then you have Jean here. Again, this is going to be something that people disagree with necessarily, but if you still want to make her fully PvP and you want her to be super tanky, then yeah, the egg does achieve that goal. Judgment CTP is nice when it's reforged, but it doesn't need to be reforged, and this list is almost exactly the same as before, with the top 3 being identical and the bottom being identical as well. The only thing we did here was we moved Mysterio out, we moved Namor towards the bottom, and then we included Jean Grey. And Jean Grey is included in this list and in another CTP list because of what I mentioned earlier, where it basically the meta in PvP is shifting and it's growing and it's sort of pushing the older characters out. We don't know if there's going to be a place for Jean. We don't know if there's going to be a place necessarily for Adam. And although Adam doesn't really have much value outside of PvP, Jean Grey has tons of value outside of PvP. So I wanted to highlight the changing landscape and highlight that she's actually still really, really good if you give her a PvE build rather than just keeping her PvP and watching her value potentially dwindle. The Authority CTP absolutely needs to be reforged, at least a Mighty or a Brilliant, and you're always looking for that steal effect, just like the Ambush on the Greed and the Vitality on the Refinement. So you're always going for that special steal effect. The steal effect, when it triggers, gives you Super Guard Break immunity, which is very good. In general, though, I think the Authority and the Regen are both becoming more sort of supporting role CTPs. That's why you see characters like Angel here. You see characters like Ebony Maw, Kang, Strife, Rachel. These are not going to be your top tier heaviest hitters for PvP, the way that Silver Surfer and Thanos are going to be to carry your team, but they're seen more as like auxiliary roles, secondary roles, where they can still do a lot of stuff, but they're not going to be able to fully carry your team. So that's basically how it breaks out, but otherwise, or breaks down, but otherwise the list is very similar to what it's always been. And again, with the immortality characters like Wolverine, you want to make sure that they have enough damage before you build them very defensively, because otherwise it's just a war of attrition until you finally die. Destruction CTP needs to be reforged to be useful, otherwise it's just an obelisk, and you're always aiming for that strike effect. So until now, we basically have, no CTP where you're not aiming for that special effect. If it's reforged, you're basically always ignoring the all attack, all defense. The list here is identical to before. These characters are all proc friendly, and they can all be used in high level PvE content. It's not necessarily the best option for them, specifically for characters like Gladiator, Cable, Hela, Captain Marvel, if you're going for specific things like ABX, ABL. So it really matters what you're building them for. But if you want them to smash through, world boss content and that sort of thing with a proc, this is the ideal scenario for most of them. Although the energy CTP is good when reforged, it doesn't need to be reforged, and this list is almost identical to the old list, but we have added in a few new ones. So we raised up Black Widow's value because especially with a reforged energy, she's a very, very good striker for ABX specifically. So if you're trying to squeeze more out of your roster, you can look to use her in some situations instead of Ghost Rider or Thor, because she hits so hard with that third skill as a striker. I also swapped the places of Spider-Gwen and Gamora, because Spider-Gwen, for those people who need her as a Luna alternative, is better off with a Rage if you're going for ABX, ABL scores, whereas Gamora doesn't fit that niche as well and is proc friendly and hits super hard with even just a regular energy, as does characters like Beta Ray Bill. And then I included, for brand new for this month here, Hulk and Sentry. Sentry, my video speaks for itself. He is sort of proc friendly and he hits pretty hard, so if that's some way you want to build him, you can do that and sort of maintain a hybrid role. I also made a mistake that I want to clarify in the Sentry video, where I speculated that he didn't have super guard break immunity, and so he was getting guard broken. He was freezing on the spot. He was like basically having his attacks interrupted. It wasn't because of guard break. It was because he was being debuffed. So that he was getting snared, he was getting, paralyzed, things like that for just about a second or a little bit under a second. And I was misinterpreting that just by seeing it live as him getting guard broken. So I said that a Mighty Destruction would be the way to go for like a hybrid build for Sentry, but notice he wasn't on the Destruction list because I think an energy and a destruction essentially would bring the same value. And actually, I think the energy would be better for a hybrid role because it has a few more useful abilities, and it doesn't need to be reforged in order to gain those things. Like the strike proc doesn't do anything for PvE, obviously, besides giving 100% for PvP, sorry, besides giving 100% ignore dodge. And on the flip side, the energy gives him extra chain hit, which just increases his damage so that when he does pop off, when he's not being interrupted, he just blows through everybody. But he does have super guard break immunity like Gore, like Wolverine, so you don't need to worry about giving him guard break on an obelisk or a CTP if you're not going specifically for a PvP build. And then we put Hulk on here because he is proc friendly, although as you'll see from the next CTP, he has other options. The CTP of regen, like the authority and the rest there that need to be reforged, you're aiming for the penetration. I used to say that you were aiming for either the penetration or the all attack, all defense, but especially with Otherworld Battle becoming more popular and more important, the penetration is very valuable. Now, it's much more valuable on the Brilliant version where you can go up to 90%, which is almost double the max on the Mighty, which is 50%. I think 50% is still pretty good. And as you can see from this list, you have a lot of characters who can utilize its tankiness because they have Reflect, like Emma and Icon, or because they have tons of dodge, like Spider-Man and Angel, or because they're going to play an auxiliary role to the team by buffing them, like Hela, Agent Venom, providing those buffs, or they're just super tanky on their own, like Hulk and Sentry. Again, I don't think these are their best CTPs, it's just that they're very strong. And in Hulk's case, it still allows him to do some PvE content because it does scale his HP like the regen does. Although the Rage CTP is great now when it's reforged, it doesn't need to be reforged. And this list probably changed the most. We moved Ghost Rider out of the list, not because he's bad with a Rage now, but because there's just a lot of overlap between Ghost Rider and Black Bolt and other characters for ABX. And ABL. You don't technically need to use Ghost Rider for ABX, ABL if you have a combination of, Black Bolt, Thanos, and Captain Marvel. And with even Scarlet Witch coming in, there's even more competition for these Universal Hero days. Whereas you have someone like Hulk, for example, being potentially better than Dr. Octopus with a Mighty Rage in the same content, in ABX content. So that's pretty crazy that Hulk can do that. Again, the more HP you have on your cards, the better. So it's going to depend account to account. But I also wanted to highlight Jean and her value remaining for PvE despite potentially dwindling for PvP. We've talked about this repeatedly in the video, so I'm not going to repeat myself again, but that is why she's on this list and why we moved Ghost Rider out. Ghost Rider's not bad at all with a Rage. He's still, in my opinion, like top 10, top 11. It's just there's, much less overlap with characters like Rogue, like Cable, like Hope Summers compared to someone like Ghost Rider. And so we come to the CTP of Conquest. This one needs to be reforged. It's a super rare CTP. This is probably the most pay-to-win CTP in the game right now. You do want the Clash reforging effect. You never want the all attack, all defense. And then you want it rolled as high as possible because the Clash goes up to 60% on a Mighty, which is very good. And you can get up to 20% max HP with 80% damage reduction. That scales down as you get hit. But it's a very, very strong CTP if you can get your hands on 2 of them in order to reforge them. Now, the list here seems extremely meta for PvP. And frankly, it is. With the recent changes to the Conquest that gave it immunity to Reflect, it's very, very powerful, and with the devs making Silver Surfer a premier PvP opponent, having Reflect immunity is even more important than ever. So, unfortunately, you access that through the CTP, through it being reforged, through the Clash option, but yes, it is very, very powerful. So, anytime you're having trouble fighting against Silver Surfer, you really want to consider the Conquest CTP because, if you can get access to it, obviously, because it gives you that Reflect immunity that you could only otherwise find on a Mighty or Brilliant Greed with the Ambush proc. But yeah, the list here, the first 5 are basically mega meta for PvP, with Madeline probably being the only one that's a little bit less meta for PvP, but still very, very strong. And then the second tier of characters are also very good. There's a bit more of an auxiliary role with characters like Strife and Hela, but potentially even Hulk is good with this one. That one's a bit speculation on my part. I haven't tested a Conquest on Hulk, but I imagine it would be good because it scales his damage, not his attack. So it will work. It will synergize with his HP scaling. It increases his max HP, which obviously is amazing on paper for Hulk because the more max HP he has, the more his third skill buff scales. And then, of course, the more max HP he has, the more his attacks do damage, right? And then, of course, having 80% damage reduction. That's just on the Mighty. On the Brilliant, it goes up to 100%. Obviously, that's amazing. It decreases by 3% with each hit, but that's no biggie. So, yeah, this is a very, very powerful PvP CTP. I would highly recommend, if you didn't select it from the bingo, that you do so. If you have interest in PvP, obviously, that you do so during Black Friday, because essentially Black Friday and the anniversary are the only 2 times a year that you can guarantee yourself an RNG free CTP of Conquest. Otherwise, they're super hard to get. Like, ask Commander, he gambled 100,000 crystals, and I think I asked him after he had gambled 50,000 crystals and he had gotten 2 conquests. That's how rare they were. So yeah, pretty brutal. But anywho, that's the list. Those are the top 10 best characters for all of the 10 best CTPs in the game. Thank you so much for watching the video. Let me know what your comments are down below. Smash the like button if you enjoyed the content, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.